When I think of the Medal of Honor series, the first thing that comes to mind is World War II. I can still remember the days of playing Medal of Honor on the original PlayStation, as well as Medal of Honor Rising Sun, and another one of my favorites, Medal of Honor Frontline on the PlayStation 2. Historically, these had been games that were quite good, and honestly, some of the more memorable first-person shooters that were available on console at the time. Obviously, that's changed with so many options out there today, but back in the day, Medal of Honor was really a staple in terms of its sheer quality. This would eventually change, however, as games like Call of Duty would come out and raise the bar, as the Medal of Honor name would slowly fade into a distant memory after so many years of success. What would come of this was a drastic shift in the form of a reboot with Medal of Honor 2010, a game that would take the series from its World War II roots to a more modern setting, with the game taking place during the Afghanistan War during the 2000s. So with that in mind, let's get into the Medal of Honor reboot. Published by Electronic Arts and developed by Danger Close Games with the assistance of DICE, who worked on the multiplayer component, Medal of Honor would release on October 12, 2010 in North America, and 2 days later on October 14th in the AU and the EU. The game would also have a standard and a limited edition as well, with the latter offering a limited edition MP7 and also a digital download copy of Medal of Honor Frontline on the PlayStation 3. But in addition to that, there would also be access to a closed beta for Battlefield 3. Europe would also get its own edition as well, titled the Tier 1 edition. This included beta access for Battlefield 3, but also the Tier 1 operational class. The game would be received decently enough as well, however, it would have some controversy surrounding it, as you could originally play as the Taliban via the multiplayer game mode. This would inevitably lead to the developers changing the name to OP4 instead. There wouldn't be much in the way of promotions for this one either, though there would be a prequel to the game's events in this Medal of Honor book. And well, who could forget this hardcover Prima game guide? But anyways, with everything here out of the way, recap on the way, so if you don't want to listen to this part, here's a timestamp that you could skip to for my thoughts and opinions. The Medal of Honor reboot campaign takes place over the span of a few days. The game itself begins with a message from Lawrence Binion's For the Fallen before transitioning to a scene with SEAL's Neptune team Rabbit, one of the dudes we play as, and Mother going to jump off of a helicopter that gets blasted with an RPG. After which, we see the game flashback to 6 months earlier. This is followed by the opening credits of the game with mentions of September 11th and intelligence on the Al-Qaeda, with chatter going on involving SEALs members all going on in the background, as we see the game go on to us driving passenger in a car with this dude referred to as Voodoo, while we communicate with some other SEALs members named Preacher and Mother. So in the beginning of the game with the prologue mission First In, we overhear the SEALs members talking about some dudes on the street, giving us the location to a guy named Tariq's safe house. As we drive along, things start to seem a bit suspicious when we see that we're blocked off with Chechens coming and attacking us as we drive away and end up crashing. We go on to fight back to the ambush site and secure the crash site, going on through a building dealing with this roof collapse after the building's hit with an RPG, and then eventually rallying to Mother and Preacher, where we go on to find Tariq. When we go to search our objective, however...
Tariq? If he flipped, he didn't do it by choice. Get down!
So this booby-trapped dude ends up not being Tariq as we continue onwards. We find out after this that Langley has predatory images of dismounts moving to Bala Hissar Fort as we move out to get there, learning that they have Tariq as well. During this section, air support blows up an entrance into the fort as Mother and Rabbit clear a path for Voodoo and Preacher. Not long after this, we go to clear the last building where we find and rescue Tariq, hopping on a truck after with this cutscene where we learn that the Taliban has spies everywhere, with this dude here telling us that they're in Shahi Khat.
Where is it?
There.
How many?
Many. 500 fighters. Or more.
We're gonna need a bigger boat.
But anyways, this is followed by the mission Breaking Bagram. At the start of this level, we're driving in a truck, essentially on the attack. We go on to clear a gate and then find and eliminate mortar crews. And not long after this, we go to take a control tower as we see a Taliban counterattack. We're pretty much just holding them off here by sending in strikes until the level ends with us taking the airfield.
Great job, man. Bagram is ours. Roger, Panther. Likewise. Gentlemen, Exit airfield.
So the following cutscene, we learn that there's between 100 and 350 Al-Qaeda prepared to bring the fight to them. However, Colonel Drucker tells this other dude, General Flag, that the numbers are a lot higher, possibly in the thousands. Flag pretty much says here that he's giving Drucker 24 hours to get their forces into the valley before cutting off video, with Drucker asking where the AFO is after as they look on to some dudes on quads. So this officially begins the day 1 section of Medal of Honor, where we're playing as a member of AFL Wolfpack named Deuce in the mission Running with Wolves. So in the opening here, we learn that the Taliban are moving into the hills. We're told from this dude referred to as Panther that our mission here is to get to OP Clementine. Panther and Vegas split off from Deuce and Dusty as we drive to an outpost. Once we're there, we stash our ATVs and then secure the perimeter, covering Vegas and Panther. After this, we follow Dusty into the compound, clearing the place and then rallying on our team where we learn about enemy positions in the mountains.
Bingo. This looks useful.
Sure does. How's your Russian?
How do you say?
If these are enemy positions, we're gonna be real busy. Jimmy, Panther, things have changed. Looks like the enemy are in the mountains. There's a lot more of them.
Roger. Listen, Flag wants to send in the Rangers ahead of plan.
Not advisable. The reality has changed. Plus, Task Force Rebel is going in tonight.
That general's 9,000 miles away. He's calling an audible. He doesn't want the Afghans. He wants our guys on the ground.
He needs to listen to the guys on the ground. It's find the bad guys, kill the bad guys. It doesn't work real well the other way around.
So after this, we return to our ATVs, going on with Dusty to get to Menjwar. But first, we gotta snipe some dudes. So anyways, we continue on to the village where we search it for trucks, going on to mark them by planting beacons. Once we're done here, we return to our ATVs to regroup with our team where we see that they're gonna booby trap the ATVs and move out on foot. This is followed with a cutscene of an overhead view where we switch to Neptune, with this opening showing our dudes in some grass as we move on to OP Dorothy, eliminating Taliban scouts and then going on to take out an AAA position by blowing it up. We go on with our team after, marking trucks to be blown up and then going on to a village where Rabbit gets surprised but is quickly saved. After this, Neptune heads through a cave where they go on to clear an enemy encampment by marking targets again. So now moving to OP Dorothy, we're eventually tasked with helping our air support by blasting some dudes with a rocket, which ends the level. The following cutscene, we see Drucker and Flag having a conversation about wanting Rangers sent in. However, Drucker says that the Afghan fighters that they trained are capable enough. Sadly, some drama happens after their feed from Reaper cuts out as we see a convoy of vehicles that end up not responding to them. Flag says that they've had reports of enemy ambushes in the area, which leads to him telling Reaper that they're cleared hot to engage the vehicles. Unfortunately, these end up being our allies Task Force Rebel, who we learn are heading back to Gardez. Flag then once again says to send in the Rangers.
The Afghans don't make or break this, Drucker. Send the Rangers into the valley. With the AFO teams having destroyed the targets, there'll be hardly any resistance.
Sir, the AFO teams can continue calling in airstrikes.
Send in the Rangers.
So in the next scene, we switch to the Rangers.
Thank you for flying Ranger 2-1 lines. I'll be your steward as team leader today. Also known as first on, last off. Take it today we'll be serving rounds of 5.56, followed by our main course, all you can eat Taliban.
In the opening of Belly of the Beast, we see the Rangers getting attacked. In this level, we play as Dante Adams, who's a part of a team with Sergeant Patterson, Corporal Hernandez, and Tech Sergeant Yabara. We begin this section by moving through Wadi with our team, clearing out the Taliban. Once this is done, we move on to a nearby village where we... clear this one out too. We move up to the upper part of the village, going on through a hut where we end up needing to suppress a DSHK for our team so that they can mark the target for red phosphorus. After this, we rally up with our team as the target gets blown up. Once we're done here, we end up moving to LZ Betty to secure it. However, once we get to a hut...
Cell phone.
So anyways, we're ambushed here, which leads us needing to go on the defense. After some time, and when it looks like the Rangers are about to be overrun, they're saved by some Apaches, which ends the level, and goes on to this cutscene with the helicopters flying away. In this next level, titled Gunfighters, we're playing as Apache gunner Brad Hawkins. Not a lot to say in the beginning of this level. They pretty much say the AFO Wolfpack is reporting mortar positions, which leads to them going on to locate and engage. In this mission, we're blowing stuff up on a non-rails kind of section, so we take out mortar teams here, and then we move on to clear a village of combatants and an ammo dump. After this, the gunships move on to destroy some more mortar teams, after which, ending the level as we see this cutscene with a dude on a turret about to shoot at the gunships, but instead gets sniped in the head by Deuce. This immediately begins the next level where we're playing as Deuce. From the beginning, we put our eyes on a ridge to the north, taking camp dudes out. After this, we see enemies come searching for us, which we also end up needing to take out. Once we clear them out, we follow along with Dusty, who points out that the enemies we just took out were Chechen. We continue on after this, following a blood trail of a straggler, and then set up to ambush the enemy. So after this, we once again go with Dusty, finding an enemy camp that we end up taking dudes out in. We go to Overwatch after with Dusty as we get our eyes on Neptune to aid their movement by taking dudes out. This pretty much goes on with the level ending, having Neptune go up a ridge where we can no longer provide sniper support. This is followed by us seeing some Predator feed moving to Neptune, where we see that they're engaged with enemy forces moving uphill. This has us switch into Rabbit, where we're holding back the enemy as we gradually retreat. After some time, we fall back to a helo. Unfortunately, we end up not being able to extract here, which leaves us needing to head to a secondary LZ. But first, we gotta mark a target for air support to blow it up and then go on the defense. After this, we move on. However, we get blasted with a rocket that causes Voodoo to get hurt. So after this, we head to a village and then fight off enemies until a helicopter comes in. Once we're on it, we man a tail gun to take out dudes. Unfortunately, Preacher and Voodoo need to find another LZ. This level ends with the helo leaving the area after it's shot, which causes us to retreat without being able to pick up Preacher and Voodoo. We then see an immediate cutscene with Drucker finding out that our remaining team was left behind.
Colonel, looks like we took a bit of a hit in the valley today.
Yes, sir. We have 2 SEALs still in contact on that mountain.
Talker Gar?
Yes, sir.
Their team leader and petty officer are requesting immediate reinsertion.
Negative.
Sir?
Better to send fresh troops in. I want those SEALs to brief the QRF back in Bagram ASAP.
So we see Flag wanting fresh troops to be sent in, with him demanding that the SEALs brief the QRF at Bagram, with Drucker complying to his orders. However, we see that this doesn't happen as we begin day 2 with Rabbit and Mother reinserting to find Voodoo and Preacher.
All clear. On me, Rabbit.
Lima Charlie, Bagram, on approach. 5 seconds.
Okay. You ready? Go, go, go!
So with this scene, Rabbit and Mother get split up with the helo going down. Once Rabbit gets up, he goes on to find Mother. We do eventually find the dude, with him taking some enemies out. So we go on from here, eliminating fighters at a camp. Eventually, we end up splitting off from Mother and get caught by the enemy. Mother says that they want to take Rabbit prisoner, but they aren't gonna let that happen, which leads to them fighting. After this, we go to a peek with Mother, getting to the shack that ends up being empty aside for some dead enemies. Unfortunately, the place ends up getting attacked, which leads to Mother dragging Rabbit out of there. When Rabbit gets up, both him and Mother run to a cliff with the enemy on their backs.
Bullets or broken bones? Bones heal. Let's do it!
So they jump off of the cliff and then end up getting caught. This is followed by a cutscene with Drucker and Flag having an argument about the situation with the SEALs since they were ordered to go back to base. Basically, some dramatic stuff happens with them being able to identify Rabbit and Mother and a group of soldiers with their support helping them out. This cutscene ends with communication to Flag being cut and then Drucker orders QRF to be mobilized. This is followed with another scene where we're switched back to Dante Adams with the Rangers on board a helo.
We have SEALs in contact. MIA. Watch your fires. 15 seconds. Go to red.
I'm hit. Kill it. I have control.
So the helo's downed and we end up having to mount a minigun to defend the crash site and take out enemies. Unfortunately, we get hit with an RPG. So after this, we go to exit the helo with our team, fighting dudes until air support helps us out as we mark a few targets that get blasted, eventually moving up to this sealed off cave. Hernandez pries open the entrance here and then gets shot. This leads to Sergeant Patterson and Dante heading through the caves to search for the SEALs. Towards the end, we overhear gunfire as the pair continue on to where they locate Preacher and Voodoo. However, we also learn that Rabbit and Mother are nearby. This leads us needing to get to them by dropping enemies and pushing onwards. Eventually, we hit this point where a Predator is called in to blast the enemy, with our group rushing on into some caves where we find Mother and Rabbit. We see Rabbit here in rough shape, fading in and out while they wait for an extraction.
Almost there, brother. Almost there. Hang on.
Neptune 1, Prowler 4, on approach to LZ, grid 201889. Proceed with sit rep regarding enemy disposition near LZ.
Prowler 4, Neptune 1. No enemy.
We're losing him.
LZ is ice.
Rabbit.
LZ is ice.
Rabbit.
So Rabbit dies in this final scene with some explosions going on in the distance and this final message about warriors. This is then followed by one last scene.
صبر دقدي تسرق په موبایل غشمون سلايدي
Yeah.
And that, my friends, is Medal of Honor 2010. So summarizing the campaign of Medal of Honor 2010, I think it's a decent game for the most part. Since the game is based on real events, all the developer could have really done was try to tell the story in a way that was compelling and entertaining enough for the player. I think that this was mostly achieved due to the pacing, which you can either see as a good or a bad thing. See, the Medal of Honor reboot is relatively short. The game itself took me around 5 hours to complete, which is about the length of a Call of Duty game. I know some people don't like short games, but I think in terms of telling a compelling story, it's probably easier to keep someone more engaged and interested with something when it's not overly long or drags out too much. That being said, I did at least appreciate the constant action in Medal of Honor 2010. The game did have some variety too, but it wasn't exactly the most fantastic stuff in existence, which we'll swing back to. As for what levels I liked and disliked, well, starting with the stuff that I thought was good, I liked First In a lot as a way to set the initial tone of the game since it kind of feels like new territory. The whole initial ambush at the start and the eventual searching of buildings for Tariq is a bit tense. Other than that, I really like the final mission, Rescue the Rescuers. I feel like I should mention, they made the sections involving the 75th Rangers feel freaking awesome, and the lead up to the game's ending was actually really fantastic. But anyways, for what I didn't like, there's only really one mission. Oh boy, it's something else. weapons. The mission in mention is called Gunfighters. This was easily my least favorite mission in the game. The whole thing just felt repetitive. It's basically on rails and you're just kind of shooting away, blowing stuff up. Stuff like this tends to serve as a way to break up the usual monotony and add variety, but I don't know. I felt like this game didn't necessarily need this section because it was just so redundant. Kind of feels like something that they added at the last minute because the game wasn't long enough, but that's really all I had to say here. There's something about the Medal of Honor reboot that doesn't quite sit right with me. The game is okay, but there's something stiff about it. Like some of the movements and animations in the game feel really rigid and rough around the edges. It isn't exactly the most polished game in existence. I think the gameplay is fine, but the movement strangely reminds me of something like Call of Duty World at War, where stuff like sprinting feels kind of clunky at times. That being said, there is some stuff that I do like here. For example, you can actually slide around, which honestly surprised me because I didn't expect this to be a thing due to how clunky some of the movement feels. Additionally, you also have the ability to do this little peek around cover thing by holding a button. On PC, it's the Alt key. On controller, no idea. But yeah, I was actually strangely amused by this because it's actually a really good feature for having precise control towards leaning, since there's a lot more of a fluid movement to it since you can peek back and forth with ease. I think the guns in the game felt fine for the most part too. I didn't really favor anything except maybe the few times that I picked up an AK. However, you had a tendency to run out of ammo a lot in the game, which made it feel not as beneficial to pick up enemy weapons since your allies could resupply you with ammo if you stick with stuff like the M4 or any of the weapons that you start levels with. Seriously, I played on normal and it felt like there was some sections where I was just dumping ammo and spamming the key to request more because there were so many enemies at times. It sucked because I wanted to use other weapons, but I felt locked into begging for ammo because of all the moments where I never had any. That being said, you do have infinite ammo for your handgun, but it's like, I don't want to use that, man. Let me use a rifle. Graphics in the game are okay too. Like I said before, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to talk down on the look of older titles. However, there's sections that do look rather dull, like there isn't anything to them, which I guess I'd chalk up to as part of the setting. There's a few levels where the environment is a bit bland due to consisting of just narrow paths with hills and mountains surrounding you. But like I said, it's more than likely due to the game feeling like a lot of missions take place in the middle of nowhere, so it's excusable, I'd say. Everything related to sound is fine too. Guns sound okay, voice acting is okay, it's all fine. I think that some of it can sound boring, probably due to it being too realistic-y. Like in the mission Gunfighters, for example, it's just like radio chatter and whatnot. It sounds so mundane and uninteresting, but I'd imagine that's what it would actually sound like in that kind of scenario, so I'm willing to excuse it here. But other than that, I think the music is pretty good. There's a few catchy tracks in the OST. I really like taking the field and enemy down in specific. Anything that feels like it exists to get you pumped up is something that I can go for since I'm a sucker for edgy rock sounding tracks. So that pretty much summarizes everything about the game except for one thing: issues I found with Medal of Honor. I don't have any major complaints that I haven't already aired out. I mentioned the movement can feel a bit stiff and the fluidity of the game's animations are a bit strange. I guess if there's one thing I can point to, it's some sections of the campaign story having parts that feel kinda eh. Like I said before, the game's based on real events, but I don't know, man. The delivery in some sections is kinda cheesy. There's this one part where this dude General Flag just kinda yells out for some soldiers to be attacked out of the blue. We find out that these were allies, and then all of a sudden the dude is like, send in the Rangers, without caring about getting people killed. Like, even if something like this really happened, I think it could have been written in a way that made it feel more relevant, since I honestly didn't even realize what was happening here until I went back and rewatched everything while making this video. So in closing, the Medal of Honor reboot is a solid game. Sure, it isn't really raising the bar or anything, but for what it is, it's still a pretty entertaining experience. I think I'd put it a few steps above something like the first Homefront or even Body Count in terms of how the game plays, but with a story that I think I'd consider to be interesting enough to be worth going through at least once. Like, like, I'd say that the game is probably going to be a hit or a miss to a lot of people. I personally thought it was okay, not the best and not bad either. It really reminded me of Call of Duty at times, especially with the game's constant action and pacing. It makes it feel like something worth continuing since there isn't really any moments where the game starts to drag out, except for maybe the mission Gunfighters, which is just kind of dull. Either way, decent game and one definitely worth trying for anyone who likes first-person shooters with more modernized settings. Thank you all for watching. It took me a bit to get to this one, but it was another one I had been planning on getting to since it had so many similarities to Call of Duty. But anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm also curious what y'all think. Did you like the Medal of Honor reboot? If so, why not leave a comment and I'll check it out. But anyways, we'll be back with more soon enough, so stay tuned. Until next time, peace out.